Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Defion Productions podcast. I'm your host, Don Rinaldi, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin. This is the only live stream Bitcoin podcast in the Western New York area, filming live out of Emerge Studios in Niagara Falls, New York. If you get a chance, please like this video at some point, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow me on X, all the good stuff that people tell you to do when you're watching their content. You know the drill. A lot of stuff going on in the Bitcoin and crypto sphere. It seems like we are experiencing weeks and months, literally in 24-hour increments out here in these Bitcoin and crypto streets. We got a lot of talk about this week. Basically, as I was driving into the studio, I heard some breaking news in regards to President Trump and Binance that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the SBR news from the previous couple of days in the previous week, how the progress of that is going. We'll talk Bitcoin price. We'll talk volatility, a lot of things, a lot to talk about in the next hour on this podcast. Let's start with the charts. We'll pull up the Bitcoin charts, kind of give us an idea of where we're at the present moment at a 11:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast. We got a Bitcoin price of $82,050.64, market cap of $1.626 trillion. Ethereum, which is slowly dying against its Bitcoin price, is at about $18.83. XRP, $2.32. BNB, because we're going to talk a little bit about Binance today, $5.79. Solana, $125. Picoin, $164. Our total crypto market cap is also a little bit down. It's at $2.96 trillion. Fear and Greed Index is at 30, which is actually up a little bit. It was actually around 10 or 11 like 2 days ago. So we're getting a little bit of better sentiment, I guess you can kind of say, the last couple of days. I want to start with our leading story, though. We're going to talk about what broke earlier. If we can pull up this article, Rich. It's literally breaking, so we'll talk about it in real time. President Trump's family is in talks to acquire a stake in Binance.us. From the Wall Street Journal, Trump family has held deal talks with Binance following crypto exchange's guilty plea. Discussions for stake in Binance US's arm come as founder Xiaopeng Zhao has pushed for the administration to pardon him for his own 2023 guilty plea. This is kind of wild. I guess that this would have to be, Rich, you can kind of help me out with this. I'm making an assumption here, but I think being that he's the sitting president, it would have to be the Trump Foundation, which his kids and his family are running, that would have to run the point on this deal if there was one to be made. I don't think President Trump could necessarily do this while he's acting president. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he isn't going to be directly. I mean, we all know he's going to be involved because he'll go back to running the organization after he's president. But at the current moment, this would be his kids or whoever I think Don Jr., who's the CEO, he'd be the one that would basically be running the point on this right now.
I mean, that's the problem with all of this. I talk about this every once in a while, like that this is one of those things that they're supposed to separate, but there's families. They never truly are. Yeah, maybe he's not running the daily operations of it, but he's going to make money off of it if they make money, and he's involved in it. And then I mean, it's just a bad look. I don't know. They shouldn't be. It shouldn't be allowed. Like in the olden times, like the government would say you can't do that. Like even though you're not directly related, you are directly related. You still are part of that organization.
A lot of mixed feelings that I have about this specific story. Number one, a lot of Bitcoin maxis have been excited about Trump being what they deem to be a pro-Bitcoin president, mainly because of him speaking at the Bitcoin conference, creating the Bitcoin strategic reserve, freeing Ross, like all these good things, but we are treating him differently than we treat any other random shitcoiner because of the MAGA movement, because he's the president, because of the far left woke policies that he's changing. Like there's a lot of slack that he gets from the Bitcoin community because of all the other things that we may like that he does. But when it comes to actually the Bitcoin and crypto, like he's done nothing but really shitcoin grift since the day he took, actually 2 days before he took office, by launching his meme coin and, talking about ADA and Sol and all these other shitcoins being in a potential strategic reserve. And now looking to take a stake in the biggest exchange in the world, in the U.S. branch of that big exchange, which houses tons and tons of shitcoins. Like it's kind of wild to watch this all play out and to see like the president of the United States currently and his family and the organization that he built from the ground up, and obviously he's going to be a part of when he's done being president, looking to take a piece of the largest exchange in crypto in the world.
Even if he's not directly, let's assume that they've gone through and they made sure it's right and everything. His family's benefiting. Like it's him. Like it's still his family. Like this is the reason why a lot of us will invest, whether it's Bitcoin or 401ks, because we want to take care of our family. So he's doing what he's doing to make money for his family. Like and he's using his influence as president. Like why aren't other family, like why isn't it whatever it is, and that's why it's interesting. Like I know if you get to circle back at some point, I know we're talking about something else, but I want to hear your take on the Bitcoin meeting, like the crypto meeting that he held. Was it because it was the day after last episode, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe if you get a couple of minutes, I want to hear your perspective on what you thought about how that meeting went. Last Friday. We're
gonna
circle back to that, but like all of these things are good because they're bringing attention to this market. But I don't know. Like I don't know if it's like I don't know. I guess my perspective is all of this is. It's good because there's like, ooh, it's becoming legit. But are some of these things are some of the goals of what this was all invented for? Are we losing?
Yes, we're losing the plot. Exactly what I was going to say. Yes, we're losing the plot.
That's why I'm looking at it again, an outsider looking in. Like we're losing the story here.
There's a battle going on right now. And it's in spaces, if you're in Bitcoin spaces on a daily basis. There's a battle going on in the Bitcoin community. The Bitcoiners that are championing the SBR, they're championing the government owning it. And then the purists that, I'll say purists, I don't know if necessarily that's the right word to use. Let's just say old school Bitcoiners that are saying like, we were the anarchists, we were the anti-government guys that got this ship moving. We got this party started. And it's like the 2013 to 2016, 17 Bitcoiners against like the 2020 on Bitcoiners, because it seems like the Bitcoiners that got in the game post COVID are super, super excited about all this stuff. And it's the guys like me and the gals like me that got into this originally for it to be something that was anti-government, so we could be self-sovereign, so we could not have to worry about banks and institutions. We were excited about an alternate option, and now here we are, we're going full circle, and we're celebrating, oh, banks can use it, oh, the government's going to use it, oh, like, this is all great. It's like we already have that. It's called the US dollar. Like, we have all that already. Like, it's effed. Like it's a messed up system. It doesn't work. That's why Bitcoin was created, because the system doesn't work. And here we are. Like there's two thoughts. The first thought is Bitcoin is for anybody and everybody. So that means that I don't have to like the people that are going to use it. So the governments are probably going to be inevitable anyways. So I get that. But just because it's inevitable and just because they're allowed to do it doesn't mean that we have to be excited that it's happening, right? Like, I understand it's like number go up technology. Everybody gets excited, myself included, when the price goes up to 100K. But if you're really in Bitcoin, this is why like so many people get upset when we talk about Bitcoin, and then they get very opposed or hurt feelings when you say shit coining and you talk about all these other coins not having utility and not having a use case. And it's like the use case and utility is for the number to go up and for it to be basically what we already have. Like XRP, Cardano, Pi, all these other coins are basically here to do what the system already does. have some centralized player make the rules up, and you have to follow those rules. That's the U.S. government. The U.S. government has a system where they make up rules. You have to follow them, and that's just how it goes. And Bitcoin.
It's funny when you say that because it's kind of like it's not. It's just another thing in the system. It's not it's not a new system. It's like, and everybody when they talk about these things, they talk about it in terms of dollars. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's, you know what it reminds me of when I was a kid and they were trying to switch to the metric system. And every time we talked about the metric system, we talked about that a yard was like a meter, that like it was like a pound was like it was like instead of just learning to use the new system, like we're comparing it to the old system, which then we'll just stay with the old system. Like if this, because that's not and that's why Bitcoin again is different to me, like because it's not, and that but I still, even with the Bitcoin, I'm concerned. If I was a Bitcoiner, I'd be very concerned about the government getting its hands on it, to being involved with it.
Yeah,
because I'm just afraid of what they're going
to
do.
I'm not. No, I'm not. The part that you're bringing up, being concerned about, I'm not concerned about. Okay. The government can't change the protocol. The government can own 1 million coins, like they're saying potentially of the meeting that you're referencing that they talked about, potentially buying up to 1 million coins. Michael Saylor spoke at something a couple of days ago where he said a base case, or not a base case, but a max base case of potentially the government owning 5 million Bitcoin, which would just be wild. That'd be a lot. That's like almost 25% of the entire protocol, or 20% of the entire protocol. But even still, even if the government or any entity owns that much, they can't do anything to change any of the rules or how Bitcoin operates or the protocol or any of that kind of stuff. So that stuff is not going to be changed. It's just the ideology of like why people like myself for so long, when nobody was listening in 14, 15, 16, and 17, like if anybody's watching this podcast that's a friend of mine on any of my social media platforms that were hearing this stuff before it was popular to talk about, and probably muted me or got sick and tired of hearing me talking about get yourself some Bitcoin, get some Bitcoin, front run this thing. It's because this is all inevitable. Like we knew that it's either going to be worth $0 or it's going to be worth infinity. There's nothing in between. It's either a complete failure or it reshapes everything of how we view money. Our current system of finance is a debt-based system. The only way that the current system of finance survives is if you continue to create more debt to fund the shit that we have to pay for from yesterday. That's the system. You print more money to pay for all the obligations that you made yesterday, and you just keep doing that, kicking the can down the road over and over and over and over. It's a debt-based system. You need debt for the system to survive. You don't need debt for Bitcoin. You have 21 million Bitcoin. You get what you buy. There is no debt behind it. Now, what Michael Saylor's doing is a little bit of a different conversation because he's getting debt in the fiat world, leveraging that debt to get Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is don't trust, verify. There is no, you don't go and borrow $100,000 from the bank, put it in the bank, and now there's $100,000 here on the bank's balance sheet, $100,000 on your balance sheet, and now your money creation. Bitcoin is one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. There is no other Bitcoin that gets created. When I go and buy one Bitcoin, I don't create a second Bitcoin on a balance sheet that leverages against that, and then you expand. The system does not get expanded. There's 21 million Bitcoin, and that is all. It completely debts, no pun intended, the idea of the debt-based system. So when you have these other tokens like our Cardano and XRP and every other shit coin, you're basically doing the same thing that you're already doing with the system that we have. You're worrying about, I want the number to go from $2 to $4. I want the number to, and you're like trading out of this one to trade to that one. And it's all this shit coinery shit that's going on. And it's like, it's no different than buying Apple stock. It's no different than buying real estate. It's no different than anything else that you're doing in the fiat-based system. That's why Bitcoin and shitcoin is completely not the same. And to even say that the use case and the utility of every shitcoin is number go up. That's it. You want $10 to turn into $20. That's your utility and that's your base case. And anybody that says anything different is just being a bad actor, in my opinion, because that's not the case. You're buying all these other shitcoins because you want to make more fiat-based dollars. Those of us, and I'm speaking for Bitcoiners from 2012 to 2020, those of us that are buying it, we want to be out of this system. We want to own something that we actually own. We want to be self-sovereign, and we want to put the middle finger up to the government and say, you can't take this. You can't touch this. You can get involved if you want to. Wall Street and Larry Fink and BlackRock can get some of this if they want to. The government can make a strategic Bitcoin reserve if they want to. Everybody can have it, but you can't take mine. Yes. That's the point of this. And that's the conversation that's turning to an argument, that's turning to some people just not understanding what they own. Like I had somebody right before I went to bed last night, somebody commented on my Pi video trying to tell me that Pi coin has a better use case and utility than Bitcoin. And I just put GTFOH. You have no idea anything about Bitcoin, and you've done no studying and put no hours into Bitcoin if you're going to make that comment. And that's all you're getting from me, because this comment doesn't deserve any more of my time to even have this conversation, because you're an idiot. If you're gonna try to compare any of these centralized shitcoin systems to Bitcoin, you're just not. And what I'm seeing is game theory. Right. That's what's happening. Game theory is happening. You can say what you want about Wall Street. You can say what you want about government. You could say what you want about Donald Trump and Joe Biden. You have to be smart. And it's funny because, people make fun of like some of our past leaders like Bush and like saying you're not dumb. You may not have a 200 IQ, but you're not stupid when you ascend to power. You have skill sets. You have some semblance of an IQ and understanding. So it's only inevitable that smart people like Larry Fink, smart people like Donald Trump, smart people like Howard Lutnick that owns Cantor Fitzgerald. Like, it's only game theory smart that these people are eventually going to say, hey, let's take a look at this Bitcoin thing and let's get some of that, because it seems like it's not going to zero. And if it's not going to zero, it's probably going to go to some high number. And even if your mind is still fiat based, whatever your motivation is to buy Bitcoin, it's just an inevitability. And that's,
well, even like going back to gold, like as a comparison, like one of the things that I did research on, and I just double checked it today, was that like in the 1930s, like FDR, like actually they seized gold from American citizens because they were trying to build a gold reserve, and the Supreme Court said it was constitutional. Like, the difference is with that is the gold's in a physical place. Like, they could come to your house or your bank and take it out of your thing. They have the right to do that. They can't do that there's no way. There's no way that they can get your passwords and stuff.
Can't get your pass. No,
they can do it, and that is the thing that separates it. And all this other stuff, like they could say, the government, like if FDR could do it in 1930, there's nothing to stop the government from doing it in 2030. To say we're seizing all the Ethereum and all the Pi and everything else because we need to stabilize the financial system of the United States. They did it before, so why wouldn't they do it again?
Let me correct one thing you said. You're correct about everything you said, except they can get Bitcoin if it's on an exchange. If your Bitcoin, that's why we say not your keys, not your coins. Right. If you have your Bitcoin on Binance, which Trump is now looking to get a piece of, or Coinbase, or Gemini, or Kraken, or the tens of other exchanges out there. If you keep your Bitcoin on an exchange and the government creates some sort of act that says we are seizing your Bitcoin and it's on an exchange, you're effed.
Get out of here. See, like I
yes, yes. Why do you think? Haven't you heard us say for years? You haven't heard not your keys, not your coins?
Yeah, but I didn't think of it because I only started to really research this concept of could the government seize your gold, because I wanted to look at an historical construct for it, and I was like, well, and now I'm thinking like I didn't think about, oh my God, because now, so if I'm a Bitcoiner and if I'm like shit, I don't want it on an exchange because they've done this before, and they'll say it's for the good of America. Like, we do this shit all the time. Like, we do it. We did it in 9/11. We did it during COVID. We do this shit all the time that is good for America. But yeah, it's good for America, but it's bad for the little guy. And that's the thing. To me, that's the Binance thing has gotten much scarier for me, and I'm not even a big.
Let me break down for you and any viewers that maybe we're thinking the same that you think. There's two sides of Bitcoin ownership. Okay. There's two parts of it. There's a public key and there's a private key. Okay. The public key, when you buy Bitcoin, because you have to buy it from you're buying Bitcoin mostly on centralized platforms. So when you buy the Bitcoin, you're buying it and you have the public key. When you send that Bitcoin that's on that public centralized exchange to a decentralized wallet that you own, you're getting, because that Bitcoin is here's the thing about Bitcoin. It doesn't move. The blockchain is the blockchain. You're getting a piece of the blockchain. So you're just getting the ownership piece of that blockchain. So when you buy it from Coinbase, Coinbase is giving you that like certificate of ownership of that piece of the blockchain, but they have the private key to that piece. So when they send it to you, that piece now goes to you, and now you have your private key and that public key, and now you have full ownership of that Bitcoin. You technically share it with Coinbase when you buy it. When you send it off of the exchange, now you have the full ownership. The risk of that for people, that's why people don't always do it and get scared, is if you lose your passphrase, the Bitcoin's gone forever. Nobody can get that back. There is no Bitcoin customer service that you can call and say, hey, or you're like when your credit card, like somebody steals your credit card and you're like, hey, give me that credit back. Like when you deal in a credit-based system, that's why like if people just took a step back and realized, like when you have a credit card, if I stole your credit card and rang up $5,000, you can call your credit card company up and say, my credit card got stolen. Guess what happens to that $5,000? You don't know it. And the credit card company writes it off. Right. Why? Because the $5,000 never existed in the first place.
Not real money.
It never existed in the first place. And now I purchased $5,000 worth of goods and services. I just inflated the money supply by $5,000.
For so many people, that's an attractive type of crime because, like, it's you can and they won't and a lot of these types of like Capital One or whatever, they don't always go after some because it's not worth it for them. The amount of time they're going to spend to prosecute some guy that got your credit card information and bought a TV at Best Buy. They're not going to. They don't.
Rich,
it's not worth it for them.
The secret that nobody wants to talk about is they secretly want that to happen. Maybe not necessarily Capital One itself, but the system wants that because it's actually creating more money and inflating the money supply. When I steal your credit card, this is not a real thing. This is fictional, just in case somebody clips this. When I take your credit card from you and I go ring out $5,000, right? The $5,000 that I took from you is going to get erased off the balance sheet. But I got $5,000 worth of goods and services. Let's say I go to Walmart and buy $5,000 worth of stuff. Walmart's not going to not get the $5,000. Yeah. You don't pay the $5,000. Capital One writes that off, but Walmart gets $5,000 that never existed. Now, let's say I take the money, I take the stuff I just bought, and I go sell that to somebody else and make $3,000, and then they take that, and now all this money is getting created off money that never existed in the first place.
Been out there about credit card fraud, about protecting your identity. So like there's a whole industry that people pay a lot for, lockbox and all these other crazy things, which you should have some of those things if you've ever worried about your stuff. But there's a whole industry about protecting your identity. So that industry loves when these things happen. It's a high profile story because then they know they're just going to pick up new customers.
I think that's Devontier that just Brian D. Hey, Brian. Buy $5,000 worth of Creed tickets.
Brian, how are you, man?
What's up, B? Let's go to our next thing that real quick. This is kind of what you were bringing up. Senator Lummis has been the big senator for the Bitcoin Act. These guys here, these old ass white guys and white girls, I couldn't even tell you all their names, so I'm not going to try to pretend. But I guess I could because there's their Twitter handles at the top if I wasn't stupid and can see. I guess Tuberville's one of them. Jim Justice, Roger Marshall, Bernie Monero, and Marsha Blackburn all signed to their to the Bitcoin Act that they're trying to get through Congress and Senate and get it passed. So the long and the short of it is when Trump signs the executive order, it's only good while he's president. The next president can come in and change it. So if you want it to be law, it's got to go through Congress. So you got to get the Congress men and women to get behind it. Lummis is trying to do that, to sign the Bitcoin Act. I'm not overly confident that it will pass, but I guess we'll see. Let's go on to our next story. I was hoping Troy would be here to ask him this, but I guess I'll just kind of talk about it. The obvious, if for those that can see the screen, if you could sit on this bench for 1 hour with one Bitcoiner, who would it be? The obvious that most people would probably say would be Satoshi, who created Bitcoin, but let's pretend that Satoshi is not one of the options. If you could sit on this bench,
he's fake anyway. He's not a real person anyway.
Yeah, we who knows? A lot of people are saying it's the NSA. Nobody knows.
It's the FBI.
Yeah, FBI. The FBI could never create something this good. They're not. The government is not. Anybody that thinks it's the government doesn't know how the government operates, because there's no way this would have been this successful for this long if the government was involved.
The government's great at everything.
Yeah, right. So for me, like, if you could sit on this bench for 1 hour with one Bitcoiner, who would it be? And for me, there's probably, I made a video about this actually 2 summers ago, where I said the 5 most influential Bitcoiners on my journey have been, and a couple of people on that list were, I know this is going to piss some people off, but Roger Ver was one of them, because he used to be before the block size wars in 2017. He was a good advocate for Bitcoin. Saylor was obviously on that list as being, I think he was like 4 or 5 at the time that I made that video. But for me, it would be Andreas Antonopoulos would be the Bitcoiner I'd want to sit down with. He actually was, I believe, he would have been the first Bitcoiner to ever be on the Joe Rogan podcast. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about Bitcoin before Bitcoin was ever really mainstream popular. This was pre-2017 bull run that he was on there. But Andreas Antonopoulos would speak about Bitcoin in rooms of like 20 people. And he speaks with great understanding. He says things in a way that for me in my early days really helped drive it home. My understanding of the ecosystem, the space, and the importance, and getting down that rabbit hole. He's kind of taken a back seat. He hasn't really been very active. His Twitter account, he doesn't tweet often at all. There was like a couple of year gap in between his tweets. I don't really know why he stepped away like he did. But that would probably be the Bitcoiner that I would love to sit on a bench for 1 hour and have a conversation with. And number 2 might be Michael Saylor, just because I've watched so many of his videos. I don't agree with everything he does. I don't agree with all his ideologies, but he gets it. He understands it. And just the way that he speaks, and having listened to so many of his content, he'd be number 2. But Andreas Antonopoulos would definitely be number 1 for me of who I'd want to sit on that bench with. We can go on to the next thing. I would have asked Troy, but he's not here to ask, so we'll move on to the next. Look at this. 5 years ago, right around this time, I believe it was 2 or 3 days ago that the lockdowns officially went into effect for COVID 5 years ago. We're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the worst day of the 2020 COVID crash. What's today, the 13th? So we're 3 days away. March 16th, 2020, the S&P 500 was down 11.98%. The 3rd worst day in its history. Look at that. That was the S&P 500 chart, which every single index was red. If we take a look, Apple was down 12.4%. Google was down 10%. Amazon was down 8%. Microsoft was down 11.4%. Alibaba was down 8%. Just an absolute bloodbath. And if you remember at the time, they actually hit the circuit breakers, which is a thing in stocks. They hit the circuit breakers 3 times that day, which means that when the stocks hit a 7% drop, they turned off the stock trading for about an hour, turned it back on, and it went down again. And they did it like 3 times. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the stock market closed early that day. They just said, we're done. We're going to take our ball and go home, which is another reason why the system is so manipulated. Like, Bitcoin can have a 40% drop in one day and nobody's shutting. It's 24/7, 365. It's as free of a market. Now, you can argue that there's manipulation in Bitcoin and crypto, and there probably is some to some extent, but there is no manipulation in the event that you can just shut the markets off from trading and stop people from losing money. In the stock market, you can do that. And that's why I wanted to bring that up. And then the first comment at the bottom, it's crazy to think how much the market has rebounded since then. March 2020 was a tough time, but it really showed the resilience of the economy and investors. I would say, and what money printing could do for stocks. Because if you take a look at where the S&P 500 was and the stock market was 5 years ago at that point, the multiples that it's up is all because of the money printing that was printed into the
a lot of
economy.
these companies that lost money value that day, they made a ton of money during that.
Oh God, yeah.
Most companies that knew how to switch to online this and online that, guess what? They all did great. Like Amazon is a much better business model now, like in terms of not to work for them, but from a financial standpoint, they've done significantly well. Like, more companies that were brick and mortar were damaged. Most Apple, you can buy your phone and your computer online or your iPad online. So
Yeah.
people bought those things because, well, if I'm going to be home, I'm going to buy a new computer. Especially when they've got money from the government, they went and bought things like this. They bought fun things. They didn't buy nobody paid down debt. Most people bought things that they thought they wanted because they were stuck at home, or that was going to make their lives better because they were stuck at home. So it was kind of so a lot of these companies ended up having record profits, which is what a surprise.
Yeah. This next tweet that I have up here, probably, in my opinion, the most moderate Democrat, Ro Khanna. He seems to think more logically and streamline his thoughts on policies more so than most Democrats, in my opinion. He tweeted, Bitcoin should be bipartisan. We can't have a policy where a president issues an executive order, another reverses it, and there's uncertainty. We need consensus that Bitcoin is good for the United States and good for the world. Democrats should embrace Bitcoin. So here's a Democrat who obviously is not a fan of Donald Trump, but recognizes that Bitcoin should be a bipartisan issue. I believe he's one of the Congress people that are getting behind the Bitcoin Act as well. It's good to see. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know the state of the Democrat Party right now. I'm not. I wouldn't be able to speak on that. It's not my area of expertise. You would think at this point in time they'd be trying to get more center. So you would think somebody like Ro Khanna could be a good voice and a good leader for them to kind of make their way to the middle, seeing that the far left ideology didn't work for them this last election. But I don't know. I don't know the state of that party. I don't know if he's gonna his moving towards the middle and agreeing in something with that Donald Trump agrees with is going to have any sway in the Democrat Party. You're going to need Democrats to pass this for it to become law and not just an executive order. You will need Democrat support. Hopefully, enough forward-thinking, logical Democrats that can see the future will agree and get behind it, and we can get it from executive order to actual law. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Bitcoin doesn't need government. Government needs Bitcoin. That's what I'll say on that. You were talking about this one right here. You brought up Deutsche Bank, and I actually had this to talk about, so we can kind of bring that up. Deutsche Bank says Bitcoin is like gold, and the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve could set international standards. So talking about game theory, with the U.S. going full board into a strategic Bitcoin reserve, as of right now, it's just an executive order. It's not law, technically. I mean, it is kind of, but it's not. They before, when Biden was president, they still had 200,000-ish Bitcoin. So we still have 200,000-ish Bitcoin. We're just calling it. So we're taking it from the right pocket and putting it in the left pocket. Really, that's all we've done.
Well, that money, that Bitcoin that the government had, it was seized.
Yes.
So it wasn't really. It's almost like in a TV show where it's in like a cage. Like, not that it was physically in a cage, but it wasn't like actively part of the economic system. It was not doing anything except sitting there.
The language and the verbiage of the order that he wrote said any further crypto, Bitcoin or the other shitcoins that he mentioned, that's seized will now become part of the strategic reserve stockpile. Right. However, when he talked about Bitcoin specifically, it said if we can find ways economically feasible ways to acquire more Bitcoin that doesn't affect the taxpayer, that they would do so. So a lot of people insinuated that what they could do is liquidate gold that they already have and buy Bitcoin with the proceeds from the gold. That's one idea. So the language in the EO right now basically states anything that they confiscate will go into the stockpile, and if they can find ways to acquire new Bitcoin without buying it with taxpayer money, I guess is the way to say it, that they would do it. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I don't know how long that will be their ideology. But Deutsche Bank saying, Bitcoin being like gold and the strategic reserve could set international standards. That's a game theory thing. The minute that the United States passes a congressional law stating that the United States has a Bitcoin reserve stockpile and the United States will be acquiring X amount of Bitcoin in the next X amount of years, you set off the game theory model where other countries are like, oh shit, the biggest country in the world with the reserve currencies doing this, we better do it. I'm guessing some other countries have probably already started doing it and haven't announced it yet to front run it. If they're smart, if they have smart leaders, they've already probably started acquiring it. But that's basically when that happens is just that's the checkered flag going down, and it's like
and
game
other
on.
Governments operate in different ways, so it's not like the United States might need an act of Congress or a law to do this outside of the executive order. Other countries can just do stuff. Like their laws are. Our government does not run the way our government runs, and in some countries, and I would have to do more research on this to answer that to even back this up. Like some countries just have, the Department of Finance does things differently. They're not beholden to prime ministers because in a lot of these countries, the prime minister they change it like they change underwear. So a lot of these departments, like the UK. A lot of the UK runs. Like the prime minister can't make major changes to. He can change leadership, but he or she can't change the departments. It's run differently because the way the government is set up so differently in the UK. So it's harder for the prime minister to have huge effects on policy because, like, he's really an administrator. He's not a lawmaker. Like it's mostly, the parliament does it. So Parliament may have already passed that. And I don't know about the UK specifically, but a lot of countries in Europe specifically run very differently the way their financial management runs. Like there's not whoever the prime minister or the president is can't make major changes.
I like how the parliaments are run, and I think I know they do it in Canada because I remember watching Trudeau get into an argument like in the middle of Parliament. I believe they do it in the UK as well because they follow that same model. They're literally like they hash shit out like right on the floor, and they have
in front of everybody.
Yeah, it's very transparent.
If in a parliamentary system, Trump would have to go and hang out in Congress for a significant amount of time each month.
They
get called there and they have to go. He can't say I'm not going. And I mean, not just Trump, Biden, whoever. Like they have to go there and they have to take shit from like some little guy from Kentucky, like who just wants to yell at him. Like it's a lot of grandstanding and they throw stuff across the room and it's fun to watch other countries' parliaments. It's hilarious.
Brian just said, "Great spending my lunch with you boys. Let's do it in person soon." Back to it's okay. Back to shaping America's youth. Perhaps Bitcoin Don can be a guest presenter. You tell me the day, bro, and I'll come in there and I'll talk Bitcoin to your guys any day. That's don't threaten me with a good time, Brian. I'm down for that anytime to help.
He's over there doing I don't know if he's got geometry or trig now. I don't know.
Yeah, Brian Devontier, one of our finest at Niagara Falls High School.
One of my son's favorite teachers.
Nice. Yeah, my old college roommate and teammate in baseball. All right, let's get on to the next story while we got a little bit of time left. Let's click out of there. Technology. Okay. The U.S. has long relied on gold and oil as reserve assets. Trump's recent executive order focused on adding a Bitcoin reserve. Here's how they compare. So let's take a look at this. Hopefully the viewers can see this. Comparing storage and security of gold, oil, and Bitcoin. It's got gold, oil, Bitcoin on the left-hand side as the asset. At the top, storage requirements, security concerns, and costs. For gold, storage requirements, stored in secure facilities, for example, Fort Knox, Federal Reserve. Security concerns, vulnerable to theft, requires constant auditing, which they don't do at Fort Knox. And costs, custody fees range from 0.1% to 0.5% annually. On to oil, storage requirements stored in salt caverns, refineries, or oil tanker fleets. Security concerns, environmental risks, evaporation, contamination, costs, high infrastructure and maintenance costs subject to depreciation. Bitcoin. Storage requirements. Stored in cold storage wallets with multi-signature security. Security concerns, cybersecurity risks, hacking, mismanagement. Costs. Custody fees range from 0.5 to 0.25 annually. Higher risks due to irreversible transactions. So this was a Cointelegraph article. Not a huge Cointelegraph fan, if I'm being honest. I don't always like their content, but the takeaway from this is basically storage requirements are obviously super easy for Bitcoin, much easier than gold in oil because those are physical assets. Bitcoin is something that's just basically stored on a hard drive. Security concerns. Now, the security concerns it's a little bit misleading. This is where I have a little bit of a problem with when Cointelegraph is doing things. It's saying two different things here. So if the government were to get Bitcoin and put it on a cold storage with multi-signature security, the security concerns of hacking would not really exist because you're not going to hack a cold storage multi-signature wallet. That would be on an exchange if an exchange got hacked. And if the government's going to hold it on an exchange, then that would be an issue. But if they're going to hold it in cold storage, it wouldn't necessarily be an issue. Now, mismanagement could be an issue because you have to be responsible for your seed phrase. You have to be responsible for the self-custody. You have to be responsible for the multi-signature. So that's legit. And custody fees, you're paying the custody fees on an exchange. If you're holding it in cold storage, there wouldn't be any custody fees if you're not having somebody custody the Bitcoin. If you're doing it yourself, if the government was holding those keys themselves, there would be no charge for that, I would assume. But the irreversible transaction risk is always a risk for any cryptocurrency. So that's legitimate. And then if you were to go down further, there's a full article that you could click on that goes into more depth. U.S. Bitcoin Reserve versus gold. How do they compare? And they go into you can kind of see the gold reserves by country, the top 10 holders. America, as of right now, is still the top gold reserve holder. What was kind of surprising to me, and maybe it's because I don't research gold as much as I probably should. Look who's number 3. Italy. Is it because all the Italians like to wear gold chains?
You make that joke when you're Italian.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of I found it kind of funny. I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I rock Z20s and gold chains. Yeah,
I would really want to research why that's a thing. I'm gonna guess it has something to do with either there's a lot of gold in their hills in Italy, and or from they seized it during World War II.
I was surprised that Switzerland was number 7. I thought they would be top 2 or 3. Swiss banks and like, I think
they want money in their bank. You know what I mean? They're like, their whole thing is
cash.
Yeah, like they're hiding. People use Switzerland as
but you would be hiding your gold, I would assume. I don't know. I found that to be extremely.
I think you would have, like, again, the problem with gold is the transportation of it. So like you would have to move it. Like you don't hide it when you're hiding your money in Switzerland, like in the movies and the TV shows and stuff. It's because you're able to transfer it there electronically. It's not you're not physically moving your gold there. So
true.
I feel like. Well, who else was on? Who was second on this?
Oh, let me go back. The second was Germany.
And again,
Germany I can see.
Part of me feels
Germany I can see.
Well, Deutsche Bank's huge. Obviously.
That's why. Yeah.
Part of me feels like Germany and Italy is going to have it has something to do with the world.
The other one that was actually almost equally as surprising as Switzerland was India being 9. India, like gold is like when you get married, gold is like prevalent in like the culture of India, and there's like 1 billion people there. So I was very surprised that India and again, Switzerland were farther down the list. Italy being number 3 was really the other thing that I was thinking of. But I guess like the Vatican is considered a separate country in and of itself. It's not even part of Italy technically. So there's got to be a ton of gold in the Vatican.
I think the reason they have so much gold is the reason you stated, because it's such a big part of their culture. And I think a lot of it is cultural. Like,
yeah.
If you have a country that doesn't value the visual or the emotional connection to gold, then I feel like it probably isn't as big of a deal in those countries. You know what I mean? Like if you've got probably India, like it's definitely like when you think about how it's displayed and that might be Italy too, because you can think about it, about the churches, there's a lot of gold covered this and gold covered that in a lot of the Catholic faith. So you figure maybe I would imagine that it's got something to do with combination of they seized it and or they also had it's just such a cultural thing in gold. The gold chain thing might actually be closer to the truth than than we joked. You know?
Yeah, true.
You know?
On to the next story. PBD, Patrick Bet-David. Do you know who Patrick Bet-David is?
I do not know who that is.
Oh, I'm surprised. He has a very, very popular podcast. I actually, believe it or not, because of what I'm going to speak about him, I actually enjoy his podcast. I think they do good work. I think they have good guests. I think it's pretty decent. However, for those of you that don't know Patrick Bet-David, he made his money through MLMs, multi-level marketing. He worked for a life insurance firm that was basically you made money by recruiting people under you. That's how you made your money, was based on recruits. And he created PHP, which is people helping people, ironically enough, where they had to, in 2019 they had to disclose like the earnings for their insurance agents, and it was something like 90 something % of their insurance agents made less than $5,000 a year. And it was like the top 1% made like over $100,000 a year or something crazy like that. So he made most of his money through an MLM scheme. He actually owns part of the Yankees now. He's got a lot of different businesses and obviously has the podcast. He gives a lot of grifter vibes. Like he definitely grifts for sure. He's had Michael Saylor on his podcast at least twice, maybe more. Saylor's gone in depth on Bitcoin. So PBD's had the guests. He's had the conversations. And yesterday he made this video basically shilling XRP, talking about how XRP is all this stuff that it's just not. And I don't think if I play this video, I don't know if it can be heard. I can probably put that microphone up to it.
Just turn the microphone towards
Okay, let me play this 53-second clip of Patrick Bet-David talking about XRP. Hold on.
There. For someone that doesn't want to specialize in this, it is something you have to pay attention to. Here's why. Let's just say XRP decides to, all of a sudden, they replace SWIFT. Let's say that happens. If XRP replaces SWIFT and FedNow, you know what happens? Let me give you some numbers here. XRP's ledger processes transactions in 3 to 5 seconds at nearly no cost, making it significantly faster and cheaper than SWIFT. So, SWIFT processes $5 trillion daily, or 1.25 quadrillion annually. If you didn't know what that was, quadrillion annually, SWIFT. If XRP captures 5 to 10% of volume, let's just say 10% of volume, $125 trillion annually. The demand for XRP, by the way, could be any of these other technologies we're talking about. Analysts estimate that a $10 trillion market cap could push XRP's price to $100 per token, with full replacement potentially driving it up to $1,000 there.
So here's a guy who made his living off of grifting MLM scams, and had Michael Saylor in his podcast. Michael Saylor threw the word tokenomics around at least 2 or 3 times. So he and Patrick Bet-David is not an idiot. So what would motivate this guy to go on his? Let's take a look. Let me go to Patrick Bet-David's so you guys can kind of get an idea of like how many followers he has to 1.3 million followers on here. They have like 5 million subscribers on YouTube. So he's making these videos talking about $100 a token XRP, a $10 trillion market cap, potentially $1,000 a coin XRP. Let's go back to CoinMarketCap and take a look at XRP so we can just know how big of a grift that this is. The total supply, max supply of XRP is 100 billion tokens. 100 billion times $100. 100 billion times $1,000. These are numbers that the whole entire crypto system, all Bitcoin included, being the alpha of this whole system, is at 2.96 trillion. And he's talking about XRP being 10 trillion a token. And he's talking about XRP replacing Swift, which, by the way, they've been talking about for like 8 years now, and it still hasn't happened. So it's these, and this is what you have to be careful of in the crypto ecosystem, is guys like this that have large followings, that have a history of grifting, coming on here and making these videos. Because then what ends up happening is that video that he made, that this 53-second video, gets clipped by some idiot TikToker with a couple 100,000 followers who tweets or TikToks a video saying XRP to 100, XRP to 1,000. Then you get all these people believing that it's going to happen, thinking it's going to happen, not understanding tokenomics, not being able to do simple math. Buy this token. Maybe the token goes from $2 or whatever cents it is now to maybe like $3 or $4 or $5 or whatever the hell it could get up to. And then all of a sudden, these guys that were grifting this and pumping their own bags sell all their tokens. And then all the regular normal people that were thinking this is going to go to $100 or $1,000 are holding on to this token, and they become the exit liquidity. That's crypto. That is your standard crypto token. You have a grifter or a celebrity, knowingly or unknowingly, come into the ecosystem and sell you a bag of goods, and have normal, everyday, regular, hardworking Americans thinking that, you know, the system is recognizing, like we do as Bitcoiners, that the system is working against them. They're not going to make their wealth in the traditional system. It's going to take way too long or never going to happen at all. So they think to themselves, I have a couple $1,000. Where can I make this couple $1,000 potentially make me wealthy and change my life? It's probably not going to happen in an IRA. It's probably not going to happen in a 401k. It's probably not going to happen in the stock market. But I've seen people do it in meme coins. I've seen people do it in crypto. And this Patrick Bet David guy, who has 1 million followers, is saying that this thing could go to $100. If I put $10,000 into XRP and this $2 token ends up being $100, that's a 50x. So my $10,000 could be $500,000. I'm going to do that. And then maybe they see their token go up from $2 to $4, and they just made their 10,000 into 20,000. And the problem is that people are not good traders. People are not good at investing, and they will always 99.9% of the time be the exit liquidity and hold on too long and hold it all the way down to zero. And guys like Patrick Bet David will come in and make their 3 or 4x or 5x, whatever the case may be. And just normal everyday Americans will get hurt like they always do, no matter if it's in the traditional system or if it's in the crypto system. It's sad to see. It's sad to watch. It happens every day, rinse and repeat. This is why we say, and it's ironic because last week we ended the podcast in a similar fashion, saying that you're better off just buying, accumulating, and holding Bitcoin over the long term. Stop trying to be smarter than the market. Stop trying to outsmart the market. Stop trying to trade your way to generational wealth. The generational wealth is right in front of you. It's buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin. Don't sell it. Buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, don't sell it. The short-term price is all noise, going from the 16,000 up to 108,000, back down to wherever we're at now, 81,000. It's all short-term noise. Hold it for the long term. Don't do things that will put you in a worse position than when you started. Don't buy these garbage tokens that are promising you things that can't happen. $100 a token, $1,000 a token of XRP can't happen. No matter what anybody tries to tell you that's new to this ecosystem from 2020 on, anybody that tells you that XRP is going to $100 has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And the only motivation for them to tell you that is because they own a shit ton of XRP. Full stop. That's the utility. They own bags of XRP, so they're going to tell you it's going to go to $100 or $1,000. That's it. It can't do it tokenomics wise. And any of you idiots out there that think that it can and are telling people that it can are bad actors or just too ignorant to do any research to understand that it can't happen. That's all I'm going to say on that. I'm going to end this podcast. Those of you that watch our podcast, a couple of weeks ago, maybe almost a month ago, I talked about my mom losing her aunt, and we dedicated the podcast to my aunt who passed away and my mom. Yesterday, we suffered another loss in our family. My grandmother, my dad's mom, passed away. She was 93 years old. Rich, if you could put this up, I'm just going to share this real quick. On the right here is my mom's mom who passed away in 2005. My grandma Filardo. This is my grandma Ronali here who passed away yesterday at 93 years of age. This is a picture of me at my high school graduation with both of my grandmothers, who both, ironically enough, suffered from the same disease that took them both, dementia. Anybody that's been through that, to see them suffer at the end and lose their ability to know who people are or know who they are. Very tough way to go. I put a post up on my social media yesterday dedicating it to my grandma and all my, that was my last grandparent that I had that passed away. So I'm going to dedicate this podcast as well to my father, my aunt, the rest of my family, and to my grandma who passed away yesterday. Ironically enough, if you take a look at this picture and you zoom in, you can kind of see what I was talking about. An 18-year-old greasy Italian with 3 gold chains on, stacking them, stacking one over the other. One of those was a horn, and one of those was the NY for the Yankees, and then the big thick chain. We had that going on in 1996. But yeah, we'll end this podcast with a dedication to my grandma Ronali, who passed away after 93 years on this planet yesterday. So big shout out to my dad, my Aunt Marianne, who are definitely suffering the loss of losing their mom yesterday, and the rest of my family members, and anybody else out there who have lost anybody close to them in the recent future, or, you know, if this is a time of year that you're celebrating a loss of somebody that was close to you even a longer time ago. This podcast is dedicated to all of them. As always, like we end every single podcast the same way. Don't trust, verify. Thanks for watching. Again, if this is your first time watching, please please share this with people. Subscribe to my socials, whether it be the YouTube channel or my Facebook page or Twitter if you're watching this on the X platform. It helps get this thing out there. Not chilling anything. There's no products to sell. There's just conversation, education, understanding, and that's it. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Peace.